Why haven't you visited our troops serving in war zones in Iraq and Afghanistan in the 2 years you've been in office as Commander-in-Chief?
Well, I think you will see that happen. There are things that are being planned. We don't want to talk about it obviously because of security reasons and everything else, but there are things that are planned. As you know, I was very much opposed to the war in Iraq. I think it was a tremendous mistake. It should have never happened. You're right. I don't think anybody's been more with the military than I have as a president in terms of funding, in terms of all of the things I've been able to get them, including the vets. I don't think anybody's done more than me. I've had an unbelievable busy schedule, and I will be doing it. On top of which, you have these phony witch hunts. On top of which, I mean, we've just been very busy. But I will be doing that.
You're back in Washington on Monday, Veterans Day. Why don't you go across the river to Arlington for that ceremony? Barack Obama went every year he was here in D.C.
I should have done that. I was extremely busy on calls for the country. We did a lot of calling, as you know. I think.
But this is Veterans Day.
I probably, you know, in retrospect, I should have, and I did last year, and I will virtually every year. But we had come in very late at night, and I had just left literally the American Cemetery in Paris, and I really probably assumed that was fine. And I was extremely busy because of affairs of state, doing other things.
Why?
But I would have done it.
Affairs of state?
Tweeting.
What's an
For him, tweeting is an affair of state. So
or a rally where they scream "lock her up" and insult people.
All right, so that was President Trump declaring himself the most pro-military president ever, despite being too busy to visit Arlington on Veterans Day. Let's bring in right now a member of the Armed Services Committee, newly reelected Democratic Congressman Anthony Brown of Maryland. He's retired colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve and earned a Bronze Star for his service in Iraq. Thank you so much for being with us, and more importantly, thank you so much for your service.
Good morning.
I'm
it's
curious,
been a real honor to serve our country.
Well, thank you so much for being here this morning. Let me ask you about your concerns. Several things that have happened. We could talk about the president not going to Arlington, what happened over in Paris. I'm very concerned. I know a lot of us are very concerned about what's going on the border right now, that the president is actually pulling away members of our service, keeping them away from their families for what looks like a political stunt. Should those troops on the southern border be sent back home?
I think they ought to go home. I think they shouldn't have been deployed in the first place as early as this spring when National Guard units were ordered to the border. I took issue with that. I had an amendment in the Defense Authorization Bill saying that if the administration is going to order the National Guard to the border, there needs to be a strategy. You need to lay out to the American people impact on readiness, cost and benefit to the military. They didn't do that. Now, with the deployment of combat-ready, active-duty soldiers, they come from combat aviation units, combat engineer units, sustainment elements. This is a militarization of the border that is actually demoralizing to the troops because they recognize there's no real mission for them on the southwest border. They are facing a migration of people who are fleeing violence and crime. They're tired, they're hungry, they're scared, and yet we have a militarized presence at the border. So that's demoralizing for our troops. I think they ought to be home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And let me just say this. I've deployed, and I was in Iraq over Thanksgiving, over Christmas. I've visited troops as a member of Congress during the holidays. And what I do understand about soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, when you deploy them on a credible mission and they're away from their families, they get it, they understand it, they're ready to do their job. But when you send them to the southwest border like the president has done on a dubious mission, that is demoralizing and it impacts readiness.
Casey Hunt's with us and has a question. Casey.
Congressman, good to see you again. I'm actually wondering about the new makeup of the freshman class Democrats coming in to the House. Many of them actually are veterans, some of them women veterans. That is a trend that we saw throughout these midterm elections when, in fact, the number of veterans serving in our Congress had been at a historic low. What do you think those veterans are going to bring to your party, and what do they hope? What do you hope that they tell your leadership?
Yeah, first of all, we're excited. While the number of veterans in Congress is near an historic low, we've got 75 members of Congress who are veterans. We're welcoming 7 Democratic members who are veterans. And what I know about veterans who have served in the military is we're problem solvers. We focus first on mission. We recognize that we each bring different experience and background and perspective. We understand that we may disagree, but that we have a responsibility to find the common ground. Where do we agree? Let's find it, let's fix it, and let's move forward. So I'm excited about the new core of veteran legislators who will be joining us in Congress for the 116th Congress.
Hey,
John
Congressman, I want to bring you to a topic that we discussed a little earlier on the show, which is Nancy Pelosi and her quest to be the next speaker and leader of your party. I know you're for her. Explain why you're for her, and try to explain to in this answer what those among your colleagues who have doubts about her, what they should be taking into account as you guys head toward this leadership contest.
Sure, I support Nancy Pelosi. I'm also a big supporter of Steny Hoyer for Majority Leader, my good friend Jim Clyburn for Majority Whip. What we need to do is identify the most experienced leaders in the Democratic caucus. And we have a lot of great leaders, but we need to put our most experienced field marshals on the field in the 116th Congress to go toe-to-toe with Mitch McConnell in the Senate, with the president and the administration. We've got a lot of important and will prove to be difficult work to do. So we need our very best, our very most experienced. I'm also very supportive of Nancy Pelosi because I think she has a real healthy approach to national security. Later today, I am joining a number of veterans. We're going to send out a Dear Colleague letter announcing our support to Nancy. She defines national security broadly. It's not just the investment in the military, but it is addressing climate change, which is an important issue for national security, as well as education and workforce training. So those are some of the reasons why I'm supporting Nancy and why I encourage my colleagues to support Nancy to be our next speaker.
All right, Congressman Anthony Brown, thank you so much for being on the show this morning. Congratulations.
Thank you for having me.
And coming up, 80 people dead from the wildfires in California, 77 of them from the northern part of the state, where nearly 1,000 people are still missing. The latest from Paradise is next on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.